All right. So, first of all, you don't know what you're talking about in that regard, Gilbert. Secondly, he said the 80s players could not play with the guys in the 90s,
the 2000s,
and today. Here's the proof that Gilbert Arenas is off his rocker. All right. Michael Jordan, Rob, dominated the 90s, but didn't win a championship in the 80s. Michael Jordan entered the league in 1984, never won a championship in the 80s, dominated the 90s, but he couldn't play. The 80s players that beat him couldn't play in the 90s? What?
That doesn't even make any sense.
Secondly, I mean, just my second example, I could go on and on.
On and on.
Shaq dominated the late 90s and early 2000s, Rob. That 3-year stretch where the Lakers won 3 in a row, Shaq was as dominant as it gets, right?
Yep.
In 1995, Shaq got abused by Hakeem Olajuwon in the finals. Shaq will tell you that. When Houston swept Orlando, Olajuwon dominated Shaq.
Right.
Now, Olajuwon, like Jordan, entered the league in 1984. Did he dominate the 80s? Never won a championship in the 80s.
Nope. But he won 2 in the 90s.
Yeah, had Ralph Sampson as a teammate, never won the championship. Got beat in the finals by Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale.
Yep.
And it wasn't 3-on-1 because he had Ralph Sampson. So my point is, that is proof that the teams and the players in the 80s could play with the teams and the players in the 90s and the early 2000s. I would disagree, but if he had said, Rob, those old players couldn't play, like, say, from 2015 or actually about 2017 on, because now the three-pointer has become more prominent, I would disagree, but that's a better argument.
Right.
Because I just gave you proof that dudes that dominated the 2000s got dominated in the 90s or in the 80s. So what are you talking about? Now, he wants to point out Bill Laimbeer, and I'm sure part of his thinking is the athleticism, Rob.
Right. No, that's why he picked out Bill. That's why he picked out Bill Laimbeer. Like, oh, look at him. He couldn't play today. He's a stiff. You know, that's what he is.
First of all, athleticism, while important and good, obviously, is not the end-all, be-all for basketball. Is Luka what we would call athletic? You know, by today's standard, we tend to think jumping out of the gym and quick as a cat. Luka's none of that, but he owns the NBA. Is Jokic?
Thank you.
Nikola Jokic can't get a foot off the ground.
Is he the most athletic?
And these dudes that are athletic but don't know how to play basketball. I mean, seriously.
Preach, Chris.
How about James Harden, Rob? James Harden ain't athletic. You know, by what we considered athletic. He dominated the NBA. And let's talk about some. Rob, I had to write some notes because this dude is off his rocker. And he can come on the show anytime, Gilbert.
Yes, please.
Robert Williams III, Rob. That dude is 6'9", can't shoot a lick, and he is wreaking havoc on today's NBA. Since he's been back for the Celtics, they have the best defensive in the league by 4 points. Like 4 defensive rating points, they are better when he's on the floor than the best team in the league defensively.
Wow.
This is a 6'9" guy who can't shoot, ain't skilled. If he played in the 90s, Arenas would be saying, oh, he couldn't play today. What?
He's playing. Not only is he playing, he's affecting the game, Chris.
Yes.
You just said it. He's affecting the game.
Draymond Green's a 6'6" center. You know, I mean, plays a lot of center in today's NBA. Could Draymond Green even dream about playing center back in the 80s
Not
and 90s
even close.
against Patrick Ewing, Olajuwon, Shaq, David Robinson, Alonzo Moore.
He would be force fed his lunch every game, Chris.